Today we're on page 73 in our notebook. We're going to be doing writing equations again. So go ahead and pause your video so that you can set up your notebook so it looks just like mine. This is your warm-up. It says solve for x in the following equation. 4x plus 5 is equal to 25. Remember that you can do this a couple of ways. You can use your flowchart. If you don't like that way, you can also use your do and undo boxes. And remember that third step was to use nothing and just solve it just by itself. Whichever way you do like to use, remember that if you use either the flowchart or the do and undo boxes, those will not be provided for you on your test, so you're going to have to remember to draw them on your own. Your learning goal says create an equation from a given situation and solve. And your language goal says write the steps in which you would take to solve each of those equations. You don't have to write your learning and language goal anywhere in your notebook. That's just for you to know what we're actually learning today. If you'll take out the half sheet that has this example on it, says Mr. Johnson's car broke down on the highway. A towing company charged $35 with an additional $2 per mile to tow the car. If Mr. Johnson paid $135, how far was the car towed? Anytime I have word problems, I need a highlighter. So go ahead and get your highlighter out. I need to highlight the important information. I know that $35 is important. I know that additional $2 per mile is also important. And I know that $135 is important. Always underline your question. How far was the car towed? The very first thing I want to do is I want to start at my total. Remember, my total is my biggest number in my problem. So my biggest number is 135. The next thing I want to do is I want to find the word per or each so that I can write that in my rate. Well, per is right here and the number next to it happens to be 2. My input box is always my variable. Keep that in mind. It's always your variable. So variable, in this case, I'm going to use x. You can use any letter that you'd like, but you're most likely to see an x there. So I've already used 2. I've already used 135. Now all that's left is 35. That is my additional information. So I want to rewrite this equation. 2x plus 35 is equal to 135. I have to solve this equation. Remember that there's a couple of ways that I can do that. I want to do it by using my circles, or my flowchart is what it's called. So inside of my flowchart, I'm going to first start with my variable, which is x. What I'm doing with my x is I'm multiplying that by 2. So I'm going to put times 2. X times 2 is 2x. The next thing in my equation is to add 35. 2x plus 35 is just 2x plus 35. And that's all equal to 135. Then I do the opposite, plus 35. The opposite of that will be to subtract 35. So I take 135 and I subtract 35. 5 minus 5 is 0, 3 minus 3 is 0, and I bring down my 1. So I get 100. Then I have to take the opposite of times 2, which is to divide by 2. 100 divided by 2, if I were to cut that right in half, is 50. So x is equal to 50. So he was towed 50 miles. He was towed 50 miles. Go to make sure that you write all of that down. You're going to want to glue this paper in right underneath your warm-up. So you're going to glue this example here. Then you're going to need the other half sheet out so that we can do the next two examples. Example A says which situation can be represented by the equation 40x plus 20 is equal to 200. So what I want to do is first highlight the equation that they give me. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to match one of these answer choices to the equation that they give us. So letter A says Mitch owed Jason $200. Mitch borrowed $20 more. If Mitch pays Jason back $40 per week, how many weeks will it take him to pay back the money? So I want to highlight any important information. 200 is important. Then borrow $20 more. Anytime I'm borrowing something, I'm taking that away. So I'm subtracting. Then he wants to pay Jason back $40 per week. And then remember that I always underline my question. So the very first thing in my equation is I always start with the total. So I have 200 is equal to, then I find the word per or each, and that's next to 40. So I'm going to put 40x. The only thing that's left, because I've already used 200 and I've already used 40, is minus 20. Because remember that I'm borrowing, so I had to subtract. So 40x minus 20 is equal to 200. Okay, well I'm looking at my equation that they give me. 40x plus 20 is equal to 200. There is a difference. It's a small difference, but there is a difference. The difference is that in my equation that I just wrote, I have minus 20, but in the equation that they have written up here, I have plus 20. And so, does it make sense? And no, because it does not match that equation. Letter B says Mitch owed Jason $200. Mitch already paid Jason back $20. If Mitch pays Jason back $40 per week, how many weeks will it take him to pay back the money? So I got to take that highlighter again. I want to highlight 200. I want to highlight already paid because that tells me that I'm adding because he already paid that. And he already paid $20. And then he also wants to pay $40 per week. And then I always underline my question. So I always start with the total. The total is my biggest number. So I have 200 is equal to, then I find the word per or each. So I have per here, and the 40 is next to it. So I have 40x. And then it says already paid Jason back $20. So I know that already paid tells me that I already gave the money back. So I'm going to add 20 here. So 40x plus 20 is equal to 200. So I'm looking up here at the top and I'm noticing that it looks really similar to this one. So I want to double check. So my equation says 40x plus 20 is equal to 200. And I'm looking up here, 40x plus 20 is equal to 200. Well, yes, they're the same. They match. But I don't know. Is this the right answer? I want to make sure that I actually set up my equation correct. So let's look at letter C. It says Mitch owed Jason $200. Mitch borrowed $40 more. If Mitch pays Jason back $20 per week, how many weeks will it take him to pay back the money? So let's highlight important things. $200 is important. Borrowed $40 more. Remember, the word borrowed tells me that I'm subtracting. And then he wants to pay him back $20 per week, and I always underline my question. I always start with the total. My total was 200. Then I always find the word per or each, and that's next to 20. Anytime I see the word per or each, that always goes next to my variable. It always goes next to that x. And so I've already used 20 and 200. The only thing that's left is my borrowing of $40, or minus 40. So I've got to take this equation that I just wrote and see if it matches the equation that's in my question. Well, my equation in my question is 40x plus 20 is equal to 200. But the equation that I just wrote is 20x minus 40 is equal to 200. That is not the same. So what I want to do is I want to take the equation that I found to be correct, which is 40x plus 20 is equal to 200. I have to take that equation and actually solve it. So underneath where it says show work, I'm going to show all of that work there. So I have 40x plus 20 is equal to 200. Remember that I can solve this a couple of ways, and how I'm going to solve it is using those boxes, or those circles rather, because I know that we're most familiar with that. The first thing I put in my first circle is my variable, or the letter. So I put x, and what's happening with my x is I'm multiplying that by 40. X times 40 is just 40x. And the next thing I'm adding 20. 40x plus 20 is just 40x plus 20. And then that's all equal to 200. The opposite of plus 20 is to subtract 20. So I take 200 and I subtract 20 from that. 0 minus 0 is 0. I have to borrow from my 2. That becomes a 10. 10 minus 2 is 8. Bring down my 1. I get 180. Then I have to do the opposite of times 40, which is to divide by 40. So I take 180 and I divide that by 40. Remember, anytime I have a 0 on the outside and a 0 on the inside, I can actually get rid of those, pretend they're not there. So now I'm looking at 18 divided by 4. How many times is 4 going to 18? Well, it goes in 4 times. I know that 4 times 4 is 16. 8 minus 6 is 2, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So I have a remainder of 2. But I don't like remainders in 7th grade. So I put a decimal here and add a 0. 4 goes into 20 5 times. So my answer here is 4.5. Be sure to write down the answer and make sure that you box it in, whether it's in your flowchart or here, make sure that you box in your answer. If you flip that paper over to example B, example B says, which equation can be represented by the equation 56 is equal to 2x minus 10? So I want to highlight this, and so all I'm trying to do is find the equation, or the scenario rather, that matches my equation. So letter A says Sammy's age is 10 more than twice Ted's age. Sammy is 56 years old. How old is Ted? So the very first thing I need to do is highlight the important things. So 10 more than. So 10 more than tells me I'm going to do 10 plus. Then it says twice. Well, twice tells me to multiply by 2, because twice is 2 times. And then the last piece is Sammy is 56 years old. So I always want to start with my biggest number because I know my biggest number is my total. So let's start with 56. Then I want to find, it says 10 more than twice. So I just want to read left to right. So I have 10 more than twice. So that looks like that. 56 is equal to 10 plus 2x. Or 56 is equal to 10 more than twice. And so does it make sense? Well, does it match my equation up here? No, because this has a subtraction and then mine has an addition, so it does not match. Letter B says Sammy's age is 10 decreased by twice Ted's age. Ted is 56 years old. How old is Sammy? So 10 decreased by. Well, 10 decreased tells me to subtract. And then twice, again, that tells me 2 times. And then I know that Ted is 56. And so I also know that my biggest number is going to be my total. So I start with 56. Then I read left to right. So I have 10 minus 2x. Does it match? It's really close. It has a subtraction symbol in there. But the thing is about this, if I were to rewrite this with my 2x on the left, so I have 56 is equal to, this negative belongs to that 2x, so it'd be negative 2x plus 10, because there's no symbol in front of that 10, which tells me that it is a positive number. So I have 56 is equal to negative 2x plus 10. That does not match my equation that they gave us. Pretty close, but not quite. So the last letter says Ted's age is twice Sammy's age, decreased by 10 years. Ted is 56 years old. How old is Sammy? So twice, I know that twice tells me 2 times. I know decreased by 10 tells me I'm subtracting 10. And then I know that Ted is 56. And remember that my biggest number is my total. So let's start with my total, 56. And then I want to read left to right. So I have 2x minus 10. So 56 is 2 times minus 10. Or twice decreased by 10. So does that match? 56 is equal to 2x minus 10. Yes, absolutely. And so now all I have to do is I actually have to solve the equation that I got that was correct. So the correct equation was this one, was letter C. And now I have to solve it. So I have 56 is equal to 2x minus 10. I know that you guys are most familiar with the equal sign on the right side, so I can rewrite this. And it would be 2x minus 10 is equal to 56. In order for me to solve this, what I can do is I can make my circles or my flowchart. And the first thing that goes in my flowchart is my variable, or x. What's happening with my x is I am multiplying that by 2. X times 2 is 2x, and the next thing is I'm subtracting 10. 2x minus 10 is just 2x minus 10, and that's all equal to 56 for my total. The next thing I do is I do the opposite of minus 10, which is to add 10. 56 plus 10 is 66. Now I do the opposite of times 2, which is to divide by 2. 66 divided by 2 is 33.